Welcome to the Awakened Parent Project, conscious conversations, empowered parenting with me, Susan Dolci. It's time to open our hearts and our minds to what it means to be a parent, exploring and expanding the ways we communicate, validate, and show up daily for our kids. With a parent-centric focus, you learn to become more present, a better active listener, more reflective, more engaged, and mutually empowered. Parenting isn't about perfection. It's about presence, honesty, self-compassion, unconditional love, and conscious communication. The Awakened Parent Project starts now. Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Welcome to the Awakened Parent Project. I'm your host, I'm Susan Dolci. I'm a certified parent coach with the Jai Institute for Parenting, and it's my hope that you will find this a safe space to journey on a path of both practical and spiritual exploration. From the time my first daughter was born in 1994, I've been driven by a vision where children are nurtured both physically and spiritually by adults who are present, grounded, and empowered. I believe that conscious communication, self-exploration, and self-forgiveness are the tools that enable parents to foster deep, lasting connections with their children. As I say in the opening, parenting isn't about perfection. It's about presence, honesty, self-compassion, unconditional love, and conscious communication. And today we are talking about academics, specifically how to help our kids succeed to the best of their ability, especially during these stressful times with so much debate around the best way to keep our kids in school during the pandemic. Today, I'm talking with veteran public school teacher and founder of Study Help Inc., Aimee Buckley. For the first 5 years of her career as a teacher, Aimee taught students with emotional issues due to neglect and trauma. She then moved to teaching students with mild to moderate disabilities, and she's been teaching in this position for the last 20 years. Study Help Inc. is a tutoring platform that connects top quality teachers with students who are looking for a better understanding in academic skills. Her platform solves many of the issues of traditional tutoring services, connecting students from anywhere in the world with top-notch teachers at a time that works for them. Study Help Inc. is not about getting A's on every assignment, but to teach students and to help them grasp the skills and concepts that they need to be successful. So I'm excited to welcome Aimee to the show. I have to admit, as we were talking before we got on air here, that it's been a while since my kids were in school. Just paid our last college tuition ever. As I said yesterday on a show, I hear choirs of angels singing. I can't believe we are finally at our last tuition payment. But a lot's changed since my kids were in elementary school and high school. And we're going to definitely talk about that. But what I'd love to start with is if you could share a little bit about how you came to found Study Help Inc.
Sure. Thank you for having me today, Susan. Study Help Inc. started at the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year. And I knew we were going back to 100% virtual learning. And I had done it in the spring. And I knew that we were going to need a lot of extra help. I knew that our children were going to need a lot of extra help because this wasn't something that we were familiar with at this point, teaching virtually. And for many years, I had parents asking me about tutoring, and I didn't really have good resources to give them. And at that point, I just decided, why don't I be that resource and develop this platform? I know many wonderful teachers, and I know that our children are going to need that extra support. They needed it before, they're going to need it even more now. And Study Help was basically born. And here we are today, and I have just the most wonderful teachers as part of our platform, which is super exciting. And I get lots of really wonderful feedback from the families and the children, a lot of excitement about how they're doing and the successes they're having. So I feel like it's been an extremely rewarding experience for me. And I'm so happy that I decided to take this on in addition to everything else we're doing right now. Doing a little extra seems like a little bit of craziness, but it's absolutely been worth it for me.
That, you know, I can't imagine what it's like. And we read so many stories, heard so many uh, tales of woe from parents who, were trying to hold down full-time jobs and be learning coaches or, makeshift teachers while their kids were home learning virtually. And so if I had been in that scenario, which I do want to talk, I have to pause because I have to say this. I really want to talk about some of the college things that you offer in your services. We're going to get to that. But from your perspective, what are some of the setbacks that have evolved from COVID in regards to education? I mean, things that maybe we might not recover from, or how can, let's just leave it at that. What are some of the things that maybe we won't get back to?
Well, I don't think there's anything at this point that's unrecoverable. I just think that it's going to take a lot of time and effort and determination to develop some of the skills that we used to have inside of the classroom. And for students who have, they didn't go on virtual, or they had very short virtual and they've been in the classroom, there's still periods of time when they're out for 10 days, right? Mm-hmm. Because somebody has come up positive. So, or their teacher is out. I mean, they're kind of, it's a little bit of a dominoes, right? Where, you might have some students out, you might have some teachers out. So we're definitely losing academic minutes, and the social interactions in terms of learning, I think, are also very important in terms of working in groups and having students find solutions together. Mm-hmm. I think that's also a very important skill for us. I mean, as adults, how often do we work with other people? Mm-hmm. Usually every project is in some way collaborative, right? Mm-hmm. So having that collaborative learning, I think, is really important. And the connection, the personal connections that we're developing is also very important. Skill-wise, I think we're definitely behind. And I was really hoping, that after a certain period of time that this would be over, but it just seems to keep evolving. Yeah. So I think instead of thinking about what are we going to do when this is over, we need to figure out how to adapt and evolve to what we currently have, so that we aren't just saying, oh, we'll do it tomorrow. Oh, we'll do it next week. Oh, when this is over, we'll learn those multiplication facts, right? It seems kind of silly, but we really do need to make sure that we're making an effort to make up that ground and to continue moving forward, instead of saying, oh, it's only a couple weeks. Oh, it's only a couple months, or they'll make it up next year. Because honestly, at this point, what do we know about that, right? So there's no reason for us not to go forward in terms of being solution oriented, which is always, I mean, I'm a special education teacher by trade. That's what I do, is be solution oriented. I think that's our best bet at getting our children developing really strong adult citizens, is staying focused now. Because what are we really trying to do? We're really trying to teach them and guide them so that they can be adults that are able to be members of our community, good citizens. All those things is what our focus really is.
So, pardon me, how, and how can we support our children in the online learning environment? I watched my niece kind of struggle with that, with having attention issues, being easily distracted. What systems can we put in place if they are, having been contact traced, or they are sick, and like, what can we do to support them best, especially if online learning just isn't their thing?
Mm-hmm. Having an environment where they can focus, I think, is one really important thing. I don't think that means that you have to take the cat or dog out of the room. How many cats and dogs have I seen in the last year? Pretty much everybody's, bring your cat to school is fine.
If anything, they help reduce anxiety,
They
right?
do. I think it's great.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be in the kitchen with dad cooking dinner or lunch or what have you, or brother playing a video game across the room. That's impossible. I know for some families that's really difficult because they live in an apartment where maybe there isn't a place, but in that sense, I would say create a corner where that is the learning space. And then it's really important to give breaks.
Yeah.
To make sure that they have that chance to unwind, regroup. And I like to alternate the more difficult assignments with the easier assignments, because it gives them a sense of moving forward. And it gives them that confidence. So I think all those things are really good. And like right now I'm sitting on a big ball. I think non-traditional seating is really great for kids and adults. I highly encourage it. I think it's much better for your brain.
I just recently saw an ad for a seat that it's not quite a ball, but it can tip and it can rotate. So it, like, if a child needs to, some children work better when they are fidgeting or moving a little bit or rocking. And I saw that, I was like, that's brilliant.
That is absolutely true. Never try and tell a kid not to fidget. I think that you are just asking for trouble. If they're fidgeting and focused, fantastic. That's
what's working for them. Yeah. So we're gonna take a break here in a second. When we come back, I want to talk. You are an expert in special education, as you said, and working with children with disabilities. I know there are a lot of families out there that are trying to get resources from their public schools. They are working with IEPs, and they're feeling that they're not supported in those endeavors. And so I would love to chat with you about that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Awakened Parent Project, and we'll be right back. Hey, everybody, we're back. This is the Awakened Parent Project. I'm Susan Dolci, and today I'm joined by Aimee Buckley. She is the founder of Study Help, Inc. And before we dive into a whole bunch of other important stuff about special education, which you are an expert at, where can people find you? How can they connect with you and get your help?
If they go to study.help, very easy, study.help, that is our website. And on that page, there is a button they can click, and they can choose either to speak with me personally or one of my teachers, or we can speak via email if they have specific questions and they don't want to schedule a live meeting like what we're doing right now.
Wonderful. And so, like, once somebody connects with you, like on average, how long would it be before they could, be connected with one of your teachers?
So when they connect with me, I speak with them usually either over the phone or through a Zoom meeting, but sometimes it's just through email. And I'll ask them a series of questions about their child so that I can match them with the best teacher for them. And I think it's really important to know that all of our teachers are credentialed teachers. They're full-time teachers. This is what they do because they love it. So after I have that meeting, if they want to go forward, then I connect them via email with the teacher and they discuss a time that works for them. And sometimes that time is the next day. Sometimes they choose a time a week out, but the first session, we don't charge ahead of time. And if they meet with the teacher and they have the session and they decide, this isn't the right teacher for me, or, something else has come up, then there's no charge for the session. But we've never had that happen. But I know that knowing that there is that possibility, that makes parents feel a lot more comfortable, because having kids is expensive, I know.
Yes. Yeah. And so in all subjects?
Pretty much all subjects, yes. We are a little bit more math and English heavy in terms of what people are looking for, but we do have the science and social studies, and we have a Spanish teacher. I know your daughter does that. We have a Spanish teacher. We actually get quite a few students from other countries as well. We have a family in China, we have a family in Singapore, we have family in Canada. So we're, like I said, anywhere that you have access, you can have a credentialed teacher to help your child.
It's an amazing service. And if I can say one thing, I know so many people agree with me. Teachers are so undervalued, I believe. So underpaid, undervalued for, I don't think any teacher goes into it saying, wow, I'm gonna, be famous teaching. Or you
Right.
teach because you love kids and you just want to see the best for them and have them flourish and blossom into their fullest expression of their potential. So I love you teachers. You're all amazing people. So anyway, before the break, we were talking, I mentioned, so you said you're a special education teacher for 20 years.
25, yes.
25, wow.
25.
And so I personally have no experience in this realm, but I know a lot of people out there do. I'm sure there are a lot of listeners out there that do. And so if you are in a public school environment, even a private school environment, and you have a child who has some sort of learning disability, what sort of resources can you provide parents, or what tips can you give parents to get some traction, to get something changed, to get noticed?
So I think what's really important for parents to know is that 99% of the time your classroom teacher is going to be on your side, and they're going to be your best ally. There's things that they won't say to you necessarily in person because they do work for the school district, but that doesn't mean that behind the curtain they aren't fighting for your child. And they're going to really be your best resource in terms of help. But there are other resources out there. If you're not a member of a community group, I would recommend doing that, because I know that the special education parent communities are extremely helpful in advising one another on how to manage their own district, because every district is different. And even within my own district, we've had, in the 20 years I've been there, we've had about 7 different directors of special education, and they all have different theories on how that should operate. Some of them, my first director really thought it was best to provide the support as early as possible, because in the end that prevents you from being sued. And it does.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's other directors who were just about, emergency management and dealing with the problems as they came up instead of trying to get to the root. So there's no one particular way You just need to find out how your school, your district operates. And the sooner you can get intervention, the better for your child. The unfortunate thing is that in the public school system in the United States, you have to show that you are 2 years behind
Oh my
in
goodness.
order to get resources and support, which is insane to me, just absolutely insane. But it's all about resources, and unfortunately, education is not a hugely funded area. It seems like there's a lot of money, but when you think about, you know, how much educating a child actually costs, it's gone pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. 2 years.
Mhm.
That blows my mind. Like that doesn't seem like that should even they should even have that as a benchmark. Um, Something I'm curious about, and I jotted this note down. So I was saying, I was telling Aimee in the break that I have a daughter who lives in the Dominican Republic, and she was teaching English in a private school there for a couple years, and they, her administration was very resistant to helping children outside of their standard protocols. Like, for example, there was one, she wasn't allowed to teach phonics, to teach English.
Mhm.
And she was like, I know this kid will flourish if I could just get them some phonics basics. And these are kids, like some of these kids were actually Chinese living in, they were Chinese students and they had immigrated several times. So Spanish was like, English was not even, it was like their third or fourth language next
Mhm.
to Spanish. And this was an all English speaking school. Anyway, I digress. There was a lot of stigma around getting your child tested. Is that still the case? I mean, are there a lot of parents or, I mean, is a resistance to um, having those tests done to see how they, what sort of things they qualify for?
For families, there's a couple of things I want to address in that. For families that tend to be like very high achieving families, yes, I would say that that is not the majority. I would say that there is a very specific group of people that struggle with the idea of their child having a disability.
Mhm.
I think another issue that you brought up is the battle that teachers have with whatever is the in way to teach.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, like, this is one of the huge reasons that I started Study Help, is that I feel like I am constantly in battle with the education system to teach the way that specific children learn. And there's always kind of the de jure idea of, is it phonics? Is it whole language? Is like,
Mhm.
every freshman needs to learn algebra. Well, if they don't know pre-algebra, how are you going to teach them algebra? They're just going to sit in that room and it's a waste of time. So yeah, that's one of the things that I really appreciate about having my own platform, is that our teachers can target exactly what that student needs in a way that supports their academic learning.
That is fabulous. Yes, there's, I mean, I remember when our youngest, no, our oldest, we were, she was applying for kindergarten, not applying, getting ready for kindergarten. And whole language was the thing back then. It was the way. And I saw so many kids struggling. And I was just like, we had already been kind of doing the phonics thing at home. I was like, it's not feeling good to me. Like, I don't necessarily like where this is going. And so we did put her in private school where phonics was still the basics. And to be honest, I did watch some friends, kids struggle with the English part because whole language just wasn't working for them. If there could have been a blend, if it wasn't just all or nothing, but back then it was all or nothing in the mid 90s. And anyway, we're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk about IEPs because this is something outside of my scope of experience. And I think it's really important. I think, as I mentioned, I think there's a lot of people. I know several friends who have had them in place for their kids. And I'd like to know more about it. I'd like you to explain it to me. We're going to take one more break. You're listening to the Awakened Parent Project, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Awakened Parent Project. I'm Susan Dolci, and today I'm chatting with Aimee Buckley. She is the founder of Study Help Inc., a 25-year veteran public teacher. And you mentioned something in our last segment about, about pre-algebra, like if you're going to put a freshman in algebra if they've never had pre-algebra. And it reminded me of something I read, don't recall where, but now there is some reconsideration of maybe having freshmen take geometry before algebra. And I was like, because geometry was my jam, like algebra was not, geometry was. And I was like, and maybe I would have started off high school with a little bit more confidence if geometry would have been first instead of algebra. Anyway, I digress. So let's talk about IEPs and 504s. As I said, this is all new to me. When we were chatting in the break, when my oldest, I have 3 daughters, was little, it was all about trying to find schools that had gifted and talented programs. And that was a big push in the public schools too. And so when did individual education programs or plans, IEPs, when did they start? And what's the difference between an IEP and a 504?
So 504 comes from the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and it's section 504.
Okay.
So, and basically students who don't need an IEP, but do need extra help for some medical reason or disability, it doesn't have to be like an actual learning disability. It could be someone who has diabetes and has a certain setup for that, or someone who is hearing impaired and needs the teacher to speak through a mic system. So when students who have IEPs graduate from high school, they no longer have IEPs. When they go to college, it becomes a 504. And there's certain accommodations that they can take with them. Things like books on tape, which, I mean, it's not tape anymore, but recorded books. That one's pretty easy now. There's a platform called Learning Ally, and basically has all the textbooks and most literature that's read in school on there, and it reads it to you and highlights it. Other things like note takers, you can have a note taker when you go to college. And in most large university classes, there's probably at least one person in there that's getting paid to take notes for other students in that class. So extended time for tests, and those generally are taken in a specific office, but like a student who has dyslexia, it's not that they don't know the information, it's that it's going to take them longer to decipher it to answer the question, right? So you want to make sure that you're providing the time to make sure that what's the point of a test? The point of the test is to know if the student learned the information, not can they read this sentence well, right?
And in a certain amount of time.
right, in a certain amount of time. And IEPs didn't really start until the American with Disabilities Act in 1990, which
Okay.
seems kind of crazy because that was only like 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So before that, they really just had designated classrooms for students with disabilities. And students in regular classrooms just had 504s, but they weren't really focused on the least restrictive environment, which is something that your special ed parents out there are going to be very familiar with, because the idea is that you want students to be in an environment where they're going to have the most growth and the least restriction, right? So you have moderate to severe classrooms
What is,
where,
yeah, I was going to say,
Mhm.
explain that to me.
So moderate to severe classroom is a classroom that has students who are nonverbal, who, you know, at the high school level, they might have kindergarten level of development.
Mhm.
And then you have mild to moderate special day class, which is what I teach. And those are the students who they can read, they can write, they can do a certain amount of math, they can engage. Sometimes socially, you wouldn't know in a crowd. Sometimes they are pretty good at reading and writing and math, but the social interaction is very, very challenging for them. So there's that level. And then there's a resource classroom, which is also mild moderate. And those are the kids where it's basically one step down from a mainstream classroom, where they're pretty much doing the same material. It's just a smaller group of kids. So instead of having 30 students, you might have 16, 17 students in there. And you're not going to hit every single point on that, but you're just going to make sure that you're focusing on those really important areas. And then you have supported classrooms and co-taught classrooms where you have a special education aide or teacher in the classroom with the mainstream teacher. And then you have those students in there that need that help. And then you just have the mainstream classroom where students have specific accommodations based on their IEP. So it really is a big spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to accommodate. So what you're saying is any there will be, how can I phrase this? There will be kids with IEPs. Let's just, for me understanding better, let's just say it's could high anxiety be an issue? Is that something, or is it usually like some sort of like a learning, like a dyslexia or?
So high anxiety becomes a disability, becomes an IEP issue and not a 504 issue if the anxiety makes it impossible for that child to learn in a traditional classroom.
Okay, so, okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
So there's like children who are selective mutes. And what that means is they're not going to talk.
Right.
And if you talk to them, ooh, the anxiety is going to go way, way up, right? So you're not going to call on them in class. They're not going to participate in discussions. You have to think of a alternative venue for those students.
So who would initiate an IEP? Would the teacher recommend it? Is it something where the parent, I mean, is it a co-thing? Like you said, the teachers have your kid's best interest at heart, but who usually initiates that?
A parent can initiate it and a teacher can initiate it. A parent can refuse it though.
Okay.
So if a teacher initiates it and the parent says, no, I don't want my child tested, then the child doesn't get tested. So every 3 years, I have to retest my students. And in order to test them, paperwork goes home and I identify every test that's going to be given to them. So usually they're given a test by the psychologist and they're given a test by me. And if they have speech and language, they're given a speech and language test. If they have adaptive PE, they have adaptive PE test. But parents have to sign off on that.
Okay, this is fascinating to me. One of my best friend, she co-hosts a show on the network with me too. She was a special education teacher for, I don't know how many years, a long time, and did a lot of sort of the, like you said, the broad spectrum sort of stuff, but she was sort of almost like a life skills teacher for the most severe, I guess is like the word that you used, teaching them how to do laundry and how to cook and how to just, adult. So yeah, this is fascinating to me. I applaud the patience and the work and the care that goes into putting plans like this together. Again, like, teachers are amazing human beings. Like, you do it because you love the kids, and doing it for 25 years is phenomenal to me, to be that committed and dedicated to wanting to see kids succeed.
I tell you, if it was just the kids, it would be the greatest job in the world. If I didn't have to feel like I was going into battle all the time. But that's really why I love Study Help, is that it's a place where we can just teach kids without all of the political garbage that happens.
Yeah. And there is a lot, like I was saying with my daughter, there's a lot of political garbage. And if it's happening in the DR, it's happening all over the world. So we're going to take a break, our last break. When we come back, I know one of the things that you offer on Study Help is college prep offerings. And I jotted down some of the things that you address, because I think this is amazing outside of the things people would expect for college prep. We're going to take one more break. You're listening to the Awakened Parent Project. We'll be back in a little bit. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Awakened Parent Project. I'm Susan Dolci. I'm here today with Aimee Buckley, and we've been talking about how to help our children succeed academically in all areas. And something that came up, we were again chatting during the break, and you said it's really hard to wear a mask. I was I guess I was complaining about some of the things my senior college daughter has expressed. But my daughter, who teaches Spanish, as we were talking about, she said that for her experiences, she doesn't understand how little kids, like, what's the effect on little kids having to wear masks and the teachers having to wear masks. She's like, you can't learn a foreign language without seeing somebody's mouth move.
I know they have the see-through ones that a lot of deaf schools use.
Okay. I've seen a few of those, but I haven't, but I'm not, again, my kids are all adults. I'm not in the school anymore seeing that, but that would because it really does impact, facial expressions and because she noticed herself, being a native English speaker, but being fluent in Spanish, that she didn't realize how much she relied on watching people speak to understand what they were saying.
In a room full of students that many of them have speech and language issues, I did rely a lot on looking at their mouths and their expressions. And now those poor kids just have to repeat themselves quite a bit. Because I'm like, okay, well, I think you said something about basketball, but I don't really know what the last part was. So it is tough. And, it's tough going 6 hours without a break, with the mask on. And I appreciate that we have that in terms of the fact that schools can stay open and the kids can stay in the classroom. But I'm also not going to, hype it up and say, woohoo, this is so awesome. It's something that we have to do to keep the classrooms full. But I'm really hoping it doesn't become like TSA where it's just what you have to do to get on an airplane.
Yeah,
I mean, I remember walking up to the gate to, pick up my family or what have you. So I'm hoping this doesn't end up like that. Fingers crossed, everyone.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Prayer hands too. So so your website is study.help. And you have a range, you cover everything from elementary to college. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because you have college prep offerings. And so, we expect to see the SAT and AP prep and ACT prep. And we were talking how a lot of the colleges are doing away with standardized testing. We were like, yes.
Look, SAT and ACT is not going to be on my platform because it doesn't actually tell us anything anymore because everyone has SAT and ACT classes, and then you have the kids who don't. So is it a realistic view of how a student is going to do in college? No, I don't support it at all. I'm glad they're getting rid of it. I think there's many, many better ways to determine if a student's going to be a fit for a university other than taking a standardized test like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And after going through 3 different rounds of college applications and seeing who lands where and why, I remember the principal of their high school saying that he was using Harvard as an example. And he's like, you could have a 36 on your ACT and you could have a 4-point GPA. But if you don't play the cello and they want a cello player, you're not getting in. And it is in a lot of ways, it is sort of ludicrous, but I know they're trying to find like a balanced class. They want, some well-rounded group of kids coming in, but it really, after going through it 3 times, shake my head. I don't understand how the acceptance process actually works.
Probably in the 80s, before they had all these SAT classes and prep books and kids just showed up and took the test, it probably was a better, yeah, me too. It probably was a better view of where kids were, but I don't think that's true anymore. I think the kids who have resources definitely have a bonus, but that does not make them the brightest or best of the bunch for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the other things, and this is why this caught my eye, were the two things actually. One of the offerings was Adulting 101. Can all of our college age children get Adulting 101 before they go away to school?
So I actually teach that course, and I started teaching it through adult education in my area many years ago, because people would say to me, well, how come they don't teach that in school? And, and I was like, well, they probably should. And I do, but I know that that isn't common practice. So let's have this class. And, the things that I talk about, how to do a job interview, how to write a resume, what's a cover letter, how to do a budget, like the different types of budgeting that you can use, just a bunch of basic life skills. And what I like about that class is the kids who come to it actually pay attention, because I do it in my classroom. And, kids, they just, I'm not going to ever need this. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, well, actually you are going to need this. I had a guest speaker who is a real estate agent in the area come in and talk about, how do you rent an apartment? What do you look for? The rental market around me is very tight. So it's important that they present themselves in a certain way. And he gave them this whole sheet of information. And, you know, half the class just left it there and got up at the end of the period and walked out. And it's like, well, okay, but you probably wanted that. And I bet in, you know, a year from now, you're going to be emailing me saying, hey, do you remember when that person came and he said something, but I don't quite remember. So
one of the things I found with the millennials is they don't know how to write a check. They don't know how to write a check because they everything is digital. And then, you know, all they have to do is take a picture of their check to deposit it. So they don't know how to fill out a deposit slip. I had to teach my adult daughter how to fill out a deposit slip. Like, how did we never teach this to you? She just never had to do it because everything was digital. Don't know how to write a check. I found that interesting.
And I don't know how much longer people will be writing checks. Honestly, I mean, remember when we were young and you used your credit card and they did the machine?
Yeah.
You know, the carbon copy and rip up my copy and that whole thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing that you deal with in the college prep offerings is stress management, which is hugely important for kids going off to school, especially if they're going far away. Like all three of my kids went several 100 miles away from home.
So we have a wonderful teacher. Her name is Anna. And Anna is a teacher and a yoga teacher. So she has seen and done this in her classroom and knows different techniques. And when we were first starting this platform, my nieces took the class with her, they're little kids, because, you know, I wanted to see how it was going to play out. And they loved it. And, you know, they're younger, but she had this like breathing star where they trace the star and they go out, they breathe out, they go in, they breathe in, and they're still using it a year later. So I think it's a great way. And that was right when everything went virtual. And they made friends in the class, and it was just, I feel like it was the right time for them to have that. And I took the class with them. It was fantastic. So
stress management is important for all levels.
Yes.
Thank you, Aimee. This has been wonderful. You've taught me so much. Like I said, it's been a while since my kids have been in school, but I was excited to have you on and talk about how we can best support our kids academically. Your website is study.help. And if you go over there, you can fill out a form and get in touch with Aimee and set up an appointment for a call. Excuse me. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. I always say that. Conscious parenting is about allowing our children to be our awakening. Thanks for being on the show, Aimee. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for being a part of the Awakened Parent Project. My goal with this show is to help us all become more compassionate and engaged parents by diving into the many techniques and ideologies of the conscious parenting community. This is a safe space to embark on a practical and spiritual journey of self-exploration and expand our ideas about conscious parenting. Got thoughts, questions, ideas? I want to hear from you. Reach out to me if there's a topic you'd like to hear covered on the show, or to share your conscious parenting story by visiting susandolci.com.